Well, the church has an interesting history of that, in that the church is worldwide and it crosses cultures tremendously. But it's always been said, and is still true, that 11 o'clock on Sunday morning is the most segregated hour in America. Um, so that's a challenge for the church. We're here to observe Black History Month and Martin Luther King, and it's certainly the case that some churches figured very prominently in the civil rights era. Martin was himself an ordained minister, went to one of my sister's schools, but it's also the case that a number of churches weren't involved. And so churches of a variety of types and denominations have wrestled with the issue of how do we get better engaged in a multicultural world. What it has meant for my institution is that we've worked very explicitly, very intentionally, to be a multicultural school, so that we have now at Wesley, which is about 43% ethnic minority, a large number of people from many different ethnic groups, particularly African American and Korean and Korean American. But there are also 26 different countries represented in our student body, and that's not that's not by accident. That's on purpose. Now, we set about to do this, realizing it was going to be difficult, and it still is. But we have found that it ends up being a great contributor to the strength of our community as a seminary, because we're preparing people to live in that kind of world and lead. But it's also absolutely essential for our very mission and how we prepare people to speak about the gospel, about their work in the world, and to be able to serve anywhere. And one of the obstacles is just natural tendency. People tend to go where their parents went. People travel in streams. And at first, our challenge was, how do we cross the streams? How do we actually root ourselves in different communities? And it takes a long-term commitment of time, of money. It also takes the willingness to realize that people come out of very different perspectives. They read the Bible differently. They read their community differently. And it means that our faculty has to figure out how itself it can be more diverse, but also how it can teach to a room full of people that are very different one from another, and not just cultural difference. We have people in the group that came in this spring. We have people straight out of college. We have young. We have old. We have a former U.S. ambassador. We have police officers. We have a lot of different people. So you come into the room, and it just takes longer to say hello, let alone get to the topic of the course. I think we've had tremendous struggle in recent years, but it's been the necessary next step in the struggle. It's interesting that you mentioned Charleston, because the pastor of the church in which that shooting occurred, he was also killed, was a student of ours while he was there. And I've preached in that church, and I know that church really well. And I went to his funeral. The remarkable thing is how Charleston reacted. Charleston reacted, not just the people in the church. Everybody will remember how the family reacted. There were family members of the victims who the next day forgave the shooter. The next day. And immediately, people on both sides of the color divide in Charleston reached out to each other. Church leaders reached out to the white mayor and the white police chief and vice versa. And as a result, that city reacted with extraordinary grace and courage in the days afterwards. The reason they had done that is there had been a lot of history of conversation across the communities in what had been a bastion of the Confederacy. So I think we have progressed. I think there's a whole lot more to do. Somebody might ask, is the glass half full or half empty? Depends on how thirsty you are. I don't think we should say we have failed by any means. I think instead, the makeup of my institution, the makeup of this institution, Chesapeake College, is a testimony to how far we've come. I think the focus of this occasion is something called the J.C. Gibson Memorial Scholarship Fund. And that fund enables students access to this college. And I hope to be able to talk about what it means to have that focus on this commemoration of Martin Luther King and Black History Month, what it means to work through a college such as Chesapeake, and how this college can, and that fund, can be the vehicle to accomplish what Martin Luther King called the beloved community. I think no other institution will have as big an impact on building community here in this region as this college, because like the local reservoir, like a local savings and loan, a community college such as this, if invested in, the investment stays here. And the community builds because a college represents the best of what we want to accomplish.